Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Streamed live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation, and I'm joined this morning by my good friend and brother,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric, and happy new year to you.
Happy New Year, Tommy. I like the way the numbers look, Tommy. 2022, all them twos, man. We about to do something.
About to do something. We got to pay attention to those numbers, right? As we're calculating things. It's going to be a great year, Eric. It's going to be a great year on a number of different levels.
Right. Doubling your wealth, doubling your joy, doubling your happiness, doubling your success with your families. This is a year of doubling, to double. And so I really am excited, Tommy, about what's in front of us, man. I'm an optimist, though, anyway. But the start of a new year is always a time of thinking about what can I make sort of some changes? Where can I make some changes that will make a difference in my life, in our business, in our families, man? Let's just talk about sort of, 2021 in review. We talk usually about how was your week. How was your year, Tommy? What came out of 2021 for you?
2021 was a very successful year. It was a year of growth for me and for my business, for my family. It was a year of growth personally because I had come to reconcile some mistakes and missteps with relationships that I had over the last several years, and I was able to forgive. I was able to forgive, and I asked for forgiveness, and I received that forgiveness, Eric. That happened a lot last year. And then also, I believe that in my forgiving other people and being forgiven, that my company continued to receive blessings. We've made some mistakes with some clients. They were able to come back to us and tell us of these mistakes and say, let's right those wrongs, but let's stay together and let's move forward.
Right.
And so we took that to heart. We didn't take it for granted. And we simply streamlined some things. We tweaked some of our processes. We actually flushed out and brought in different people, right? We had different team members. So Make It Plain, as far as a workforce, we look differently.
Right.
Which we simply continued to grow. And so last year, 2021, was a year of growth for us, a year of reconciliation as well.
Right. Tommy, I love that, man. That's a lot of good stuff. As I look at 2021, it was a year of growth for us as well. And I think that many people in our industry would say the same thing. I think that 2020 was such a dramatic shock to the economic ecosystem, to our country, our world, to the human, this notion of our own, mortality, I think came clear to us out of 2020. And I think that 2021, we were anticipating being able to break out of that. But the longer the year went, the more we recognized that we were going to have to prepare ourselves for the long haul. And I think that that people recognize in 2021 that we've got to be dealing with relationships. We saw in schools where our kids were out of school and that they fell behind. We saw that the questions, we've been so used to sort of easy soundbite answers.
Right.
And I think what we saw last year was there's no such thing, that there's no quick fixes. There's no sound bites that can just sort of get us out of where we are. I think we've taken things like our health for granted. We've taken things like our jobs in the workplace for granted. I think we saw some industries go under. We're still seeing that, man, where major businesses are their entire system is being shocked by COVID-19 in many ways, and by some of our silos and our cultural isolation. And so I think that many clients began to grasp for solutions, new solutions and answers. And I think that we benefited from that, Tommy, not simply because we helped them focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but because we help them focus on creating people-centered workplaces. And I think that that's at the heart of our message. Yeah. And so I'm grateful. Tommy, I did a lot of learning as well, man. And there were some missteps that we made, some things that didn't go exactly how we'd like them to. And but that's a part of growth. I think that that people that do the work that we do have to, along with our clients, figure out how to scale this. Yeah. I began to say to some organizations that, that brown and black people in many ways, and women, have been the educators of the world around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we've educated the world, and then sort of bigger companies come in and they allow them to scale globally. And so organizations are beginning to recognize that they may have a responsibility to make sure that they're utilizing and taking organizations like ours to help them scale globally versus just limiting us to the US market and what we can do with traditional diversity. And so I'm excited about that. Last year was a year of innovative thinking. And we did some things, changed some things, used technology in DEI in different ways. We were able to see a lot more organizations that were interested in holistic solutions, Tommy, where I would say, this year now we'll be in business 31 years. For half the time we've been in business, it's been mostly the front half was nothing but training, diversity training. But I think that we're seeing in this last third that organizations are recognizing that they've got to put together holistic solutions. And so today, you and I are going to talk about, what it looks like. We got Patrice Borders that's going to join us this morning. We're so excited about having her engage in this conversation with us around sort of the state of diversity, if you will, as we prepare for 2022. And Tommy, I'm grateful, man, for my family. I'm grateful for the time that we have together. One of the things that I think became more clear for me in this last year is the need to help my children understand that my love is not conditional, that how proud I am of them is not conditional, that whatever you are doing in life, I want you to always know that you have my love and I'm proud of you every day, all day. Because I think that what we're seeing, Tommy, that's coming into clear focus is the mental challenges that this young generation is dealing with, man, whether you say it's because of social media or because all of the stress of, they're supposed to go past their parents. Yeah. With all of this unrest, it's been difficult to do that. Yeah. And I think that we've got to make sure that we're moving beyond an old mindset of defining success as materialism and career focused. And so I'm just grateful that I've been able to say to my kids with great clarity that you are enough. You don't have to do anything else, that you are enough. And this love that we have together is life sustaining and life giving. And I think, Tommy, that that's one of the things that as we hold on to that as our central message, I think it prepares us to be better business leaders. It prepares our children to go after their purpose. And I think that's one of the things that coming out of 2021, I would say is something that people need to look towards is what is my purpose? What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Any last words, Tommy, before we bring Patrice Borders onto our platform?
Yeah, Eric, you're kicking off this year of 2022 with such insight and wisdom, and for our community that joins us, and we'll revisit this conversation as we kick off this year. I don't want your comments and message to be missed. I will speak selfishly that it was not missed. It landed on me as I think of my son in his conversations with me over the last year, he's changed his mind with regards to potential schools for college, with potential careers. He's changed his mind several times. And I've learned, and you have confirmed with me, I've learned just to accept him and where he's going, and not be disappointed as a parent, not force my own ideals, my own dreams on him or anyone else.
That's it, Tommy.
I think that is very freeing.
Right.
I remember in years past, we used to always talk about how free we are, how liberated we are. And I would close by saying, Eric, that a lot of that freedom is in our mindset. It's in our mindset. Are we free to be? And are we allowing others the freedom to be? Particularly if it creates no harm, right? No hurt, no harm. Now, if it's creating harm to another human being, as we are believers in Christ and believers in us as humans, then there's another discussion, right? That your freedom is limiting or prohibiting another person's freedom.
Right.
But what we're talking about is simply allowing other people to maximize their own potential and realize their own dreams, and then hopefully just contribute to their realization of their dream. And so that's what we're doing as we kick off this year. And I want to say thank you, man, for those insights and wisdom.
Right. One last thing. And Patrice, she's listening. I want you to jump right in on this as soon as you come in and introduce yourself. But I would say this, Tommy, just as an example. So last night, me and my family and my brother, we sat down, played cards, man. We played spades to bring in the new year. And so, and so I sat there, man, and I was just looking at my children. And I was looking at them. See, when we came up, Tommy, our parents always wanted to push us to maximize our potential, to make sure that you're preparing yourself to go to the right college, to then get out, get the right job, and be willing to work hard. And they almost didn't leave room in there for anything else. That was the option. And so you didn't think of any other options but those. And I think, Tommy, that we benefited from that in some ways. But I think in another way, we've got to try to help our children to even move beyond that. Yeah. In other words, because of the new world that we live in, I've had to let my kids know, look, I want you to have this message in the back of your mind. Don't be out there struggling, trying to make it and trying not to ask me for help. You see, because I raised you to be independent. Yeah, that's good. You're going to be happiest when you get your own wings flying. I want you to know I understand that. But here's what I also want you to understand. There's never a time that you can't come to me. I am always here to cover you. Yep. You can never ask me for help too much. I mean, I got to set them free, because if you don't set them free, all I think about, Tommy, is them being somewhere alone thinking, I don't want to ask my dad because I've asked him too much. So now I'm going to make some crazier choices. That's what we're trying to avoid with this generation. So you've got to go beyond the call of duty to say, hey, I understand all that other stuff about get your own wings, make sure you get your college and get the right job. But I need you to understand, I see you, and I'm 100, 200% in your corner. You can't ask me for help too much. When I said that to one of my kids, man, he said, Daddy, wow, thank you. Because that's where I was. I was feeling like a failure if I had to ask you for help. Can't have that.
No.
All right, let's bring Patrice Borders to the stage, if you will. Patrice, how are you?
I am awesome. And I am so excited to be starting 2022 with two of my all-time favorites in the space of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. There is deep history here and deep relationships. So happy New Year, Eric Ellis. Happy New Year, Tommy Lewis. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome, and we are thrilled to have you.
Absolutely.
Patrice, why don't you, Tommy, why don't you start off talking about how you met Patrice?
Yep. I'll start off and then I'll jump out to allow our guest to be center stage, right? To be center stage. And so Patrice and I, we go back several years. In fact, I did some work with her husband prior to meeting her. Okay, thank you, Eric. Prior to meeting her, and it was in the DE&I space, and I had always learned. Well, I've always known about the work of the fabulous Patrice Borders prior to me meeting her, right? And so, in particularly in Cincinnati, where it can be a smaller city, and people in certain spaces, it's the same usual suspects, if you will.
Right.
And so, full transparency, man, as I'm thinking, I can't pinpoint exactly when, right? What I do know is that it seems like it's been forever, but it hasn't. It seems like it'd be 40 or 50 years.
Right.
But I'll tell you that that's the type of personality and person that Patrice is. She is a person that is very welcoming. At least she welcomed me into the fold. Right. We could very well have been competitors in different fronts, but we both knew, and I knew particularly, that with the work I was doing in diversity, needed that bandwidth, needed to be scalable. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't about competitiveness at all. It was around delivering the service to the people and the organizations that needed it, regardless of where it was coming from. And so that's what I know best. I know, and I'm going to name one client where we worked with more specifically. We did some work with the United Way. I had a opportunity with the United Way several years ago to do a series of training with their staff here in Greater Cincinnati. And it was one of those events where, a large group of their employees would come together in a common area, a common space. And in those times, when you have 100 people in a room, there's a greater opportunity that people can hide and get lost and get distracted, right? So I wanted to break up the group in that space to really focus on those groups of 10 or 15 or 20 and not the group of 100. So I engaged Patrice, and then I fell back. Eric, I saw her doing her magic.
Right.
I'm like, all right, let me fall back and let this thing happen. And so it was a great success. So that was one of my success stories of working with Patrice Borders. But I have some more stories, but that was one of the more memorable ones.
Right. And I Patrice and I got connected through Inroads, and she was tremendously talented. She was brilliant. She was a tremendous communicator, and she was beautiful. Mm-hmm. And her and her husband, to me, they have seemed like such the perfect couple. There's some people you can't even imagine them ever hardly arguing because things look so beautiful. I mean, they both are just wonderful spirits, and I appreciate that about them. I appreciate her success, and so we work together with Inroads and with those young people. But I've just sort of kept my eye on Patrice and what she's doing over the years. And she's the kind of person, let's just talk about character, that you never feel as though Patrice is a hater. She's thinking any negative thoughts about you. Yeah. She's always pulling for you. And no matter how long it's been since you've talked, you have confidence that her character remains the same. Mm-hmm. And so I really appreciate that. And I know that anybody that she's working with, that they're grateful to have her working with them, because she brings a level of honor to her work, preparedness, a willingness to be upfront about what I know, what I don't know, what I'm good at, what I'm not. I think that those things, she's adding to the world, this beautiful bright light that's only trying to just bring positive contributions everywhere that she lands. And so I'm so grateful, and actually hate that it's been this long since we've been able to have her on. but we're grateful to have you. Patrice, I want you to introduce yourself to the audience,
Okay.
and then the floor is yours to talk about, anything that you want before we sort of dive into, and we've sort of reflected on 2021, so you can jump in on that too.
Okay.
Floor is yours.
Okay. First of all, can I begin every year like this? Because this is amazing. It is just unbelievable to be in a space where we, I think each of us have probably had the opportunity to mention each other's names in rooms where there are opportunities. And those are the types of circles that I create, and those are the type of people that are critical to be a part of this journey. There are times when we can leverage our individual talents, absolutely. But when we can leverage our collective talents and passions, that's when the real magic happens. And as I said, each of you has had that, name as a referral, as a, door opener, and 21 years in business, I am eternally grateful for that. So let me just take a step back. So Patrice Baughman borders, and I am celebrating 21 years, 2022, of being the founder and principal of Prevention Strategies, LLC. And that business gave me the opportunity to bring together my employment law expertise. I grew my teeth initially as an employment lawyer with the work that I had been doing with Janet Reed and Vincent Brown and Sam Lynch at what started as JB Reed and Associates when I came on board, and later evolved into Global Lead and then Global Novations. And then, as we know, the Cinderella story of being purchased by Korn Ferry. But that is, where I really grew to deepen my understanding of the application and the implementation of what it means to really create spaces where inclusion and belonging actually happen. And so, under the umbrella of Prevention Strategies and embedded in the name, I wanted to do work that prevented people from getting in the way of showing up with the level of, centering and presence and the capacity to really grow in their self-awareness so that they could do that inside work to have a greater outward impact in how we connect, how we communicate, how we collaborate, how we work through conflict, and then ultimately how we impact a collective culture that we share. And I think that gets to a bit of what you were talking about when I joined backstage, that it's beyond just checking a box in the space of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. It's about creating sustained behaviors that speak to a culture where everyone feels a sense of psychological safety and can contribute their gift, right? Can contribute what their own personal magic is in a way that's meaningful. So I'm excited. I think I've said that 6 times already, but I'm excited to be with you all, to be a part of this conversation, to really explore where this journey should take us next in 2022.
Right. Well, let's just dive right in. We're sort of taking a look at the current state of DEI, 2022. Where are we today? I'll take a stab at it, saying, that my father, as you both know, was a pioneer in the field of diversity, one of the fathers of the industry, started a business in the mid-'70s that did the initial work for Procter & Gamble and GE and General Motors and Ford. And so I watched him do that work back then. I hear people describe some of the work that happened in the early days as though that was the worst thing that ever happened, the old times, the old days. But what I saw was powerful conversations and personal and organizational transformation. That's what I saw. I saw grown men and women crying, coming out of workshops with a real desire to bring about change. And we saw a lot of diversity in corporations happen in that time frame, in the mid-'70s and early '80s. And so, and so we've seen it sort of transition over the years from affirmative action to racial sensitivity and gender sensitivity. To then my father and then ushering in diversity, and then diversity and inclusion, and then diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then DEI, accessibility. And so we're moving all over the map. In some ways, we've made some progress. In other ways, I would say there was a decade almost that I would say was the decade of silence as it relates to race in particular. And I think that as we talk about the state of DE&I, I think that we have to sort of look at it in connection to systemic racism and sexism and classism. I think that those are still at the heart of this, and how we handle those and navigate those and talk about those is a big part of this. So there's a part of us that's hopeful, but I've been around long enough to see the cycles, if you will, of D&I. And I would say to you, in many ways, to me, it often looks like we're driving around the same neighborhood. It just is a question of how long is it taking us to get around the circle? But we something happens, protest breaks out. People make declarations that change is here. Everybody tries to get out there with their statements. And then after a while, we lull ourselves back to sleep and we decide that it's not really worth it. And then a few organizations kind of get this. But there's always a sense that we've got to go back to work. And back to work doesn't always enthusiastically embrace DEIA, or however you might define it. So that's my opening statement about it. Anybody else can pick up?
Well, I did want to go back to what I was listening to before I moved from backstage. Okay. Because what I heard was two hearts talking about what is really at the core of why we do what we do, which is our families and our children. And I think it's not ironic, and it shouldn't be lost on any listeners, that when you talked about our relationships, both of you both mentioned my rock, which is Keith Lamont Borders. And we celebrated 27 years together this past September. And, you don't get to be in a world to give of yourself unless you have a place to go back and replenish and get resourced again. And my husband is that. And together we created a family. And we have two beautiful daughters, because I can say that, right? Because they are my hearts, two beautiful and amazing daughters. But the journey that I heard both of you speak about these last couple of years, as we had a pandemic inside a pandemic, we had to make sure that the declaration of love was clear, that the commitment was unwavering. And on more than one occasion, what I heard both of you all saying, we have said in this household, hold up. Now, there is nothing you can say, there's nothing you can do, there is nothing you can be that will change this love.
Right. Come on.
Right. There's nothing. There is nothing. And there is no condition upon which this love ebbs or flows. Right. From the moment that God blessed us with the life for us to bring in and usher in, there was never any question that you have the love. You are the love. Right. And so this moment was a chance to really like I said, reclaim that in a different way, and to navigate through the noise and make sure there was clarity on that.
Woo, say that again. Hold on, say that again.
Yeah, we had to, so that, resilience is one thing, right? But resilience, when you know that there's no bounce back, right? That requires a change, to be prepared to bounce forward. But we're going to be there as a safety net. Now we're going to help you build the muscles. We're going to help you connect with the tools, but we're always going to be there.
Right.
We're always going to be there. Like you said, don't go out there trying to ask anybody else if you haven't asked me first.
Mhm.
Because I'm not going to look at you.
That again.
I'm not going to look at you side-eyed, and I'm not going to say, "Here's the chip that is now due," because there's never a chip that is due.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I wanted to go back because I was almost in tears, and then I saw the little notice like, "Oh, the host and the hostesses can see you." I said, "Okay, let me get a little tissue and make sure I'm camera ready." But that hit because I think to have a conversation about where we move in diversity, equity, and inclusion, being clear on what is truly important as to why I do this work. It's because I don't want the same conversation for Candace and Camille. I don't want the same mountains there for them to have to climb. I don't want the same, cast of players to be there either. So it is why I do the work. And so 2022, what does it mean for diversity?
No. You don't get to just go forward after seeing all that brilliance. I'm gonna take one shot and I'm gonna so let me just put an additional emphasis on what you said, but take it to the corporate context.
Mm-hmm.
So Tommy and I both 100% agree with everything that you said, but here's what I want companies to understand about the three of us: that our values and our approaches in many ways are the same.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we're not a different person at home than we are in the workplace.
Right.
So actually, our core values that we live with our own children and our significant others, we bring that same value system to every client that we serve. We literally work with them in many ways, trying to do that in an unconditional way. We're there to see you be your best.
Yeah.
And that's what makes us happiest.
Mm-hmm.
We're not in conflict with our clients. We are pulling for them 200%.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to give our best thinking to them so that we can see them succeed. And as we see them succeed, mainly we sit back in pride and just feel good about it. So I just wanted to make sure that people understand that linkage, because a lot of times they don't, is that we're not one set of people at home and then we try to bring. I tell people in the workplace, you ain't two people either. A lot of times people think at the workplace, I get it down. I mean, sometimes I have problems at home, but in the workplace, I'm perfect. No. Whoever you are at home, that's the person that you bring into the workplace. They might not have the same liberty to tell you that your family does, but you bring in the same person. So I just wanted to expand on that. Tommy, I don't know if you wanted to weigh in on that.
So Eric, that latter point, that last point is where I think that companies who are run by people will always appreciate the work that the three of us and many others that we do and how we do what we do. In other words, that when we're doing our work of consulting, training, coaching, advising, any of that, the person that is experiencing the learning, the advice, the coaching, they know in their heart of hearts and their minds of minds that they're having to bring different masks and hats to the environment. And bringing those multiple masks or hats is exhausting. What they experience from us is that freedom. And they then turn and look at their people in their organization, their processes, and their culture and say, something's not right, and it may be because of me and us. That's what really happens, because when leaders, for example, say, man, there's some other issues happening in my life that other people don't know except the people that are involved in it.
That's
like
right.
my family.
That's right, Tommy.
Right. And I kind of hide that and I bring my corporate hat in. But then when the pressure button is pressed, I blow up or I react a certain way or I respond a certain way that may be negative. It's not always in that moment. And those executives, those leaders know that it's some of this other stuff they're having to deal with, such as, my son is 30 years old. He may be suffering with addiction. I want to hide that from everyone because no one in the world deals with a son with addiction. Come on.
Right.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
So when we bring our own vulnerability, our own access to what human beings experience, that's when people say, you know what, let's talk about the elephants in the room of race and gender and homophobia. Let's talk about that. Let's have these discussions, and let's eliminate and dismantle the systems that continue to promote racism or sexism or xenophobia. Let's dismantle those systems, even if those systems have been developed by us for us.
Mm.
It's the same neighborhood, same conversation. It's the same players. Just like what Patrice said, which was profound about our daughters, not going to having to play out the same thing.
Right.
Man, we have some work to do.
Right. Patrice is back. The ball's back in your court, and we're gonna go over today. We didn't know we had this powerhouse was just gonna come right in with fire. So it's the first show of the year. So relax. Don't worry. We're not gonna rush you off the camera.
Okay, that feels good.
Back in your court.
Okay. Want to comment on two things. First, Eric, what you said about who we are at home and who we are at work. I often go back to a quote. I think it's Aristotle: wherever you go, there you are, right? There's no getting away from who you are at the core. Right. And it's going to show up. And another space that Tommy and I, leverage in the work that we do is around emotional intelligence. So, right. There are two primary tools I bring to the work, and that's mindfulness and emotional intelligence. And as Tommy said, when we are in that zone, when our buttons have been pushed, and my work tells me, and it is affirmed again and again, that more often those buttons are pushed when it gets right to the core of who we are, right at our core values. And we don't have the capacity, right? We know the amygdala, right, is that thing that is there to say, signal, you need to protect yourself. And when our core values are under attack, that amygdala is going off and it's saying, you need to be in protection mode. And we will fight, we will run, right, that flight, or we will freeze. And that's what we see oftentimes. And we're like, why did I blow up like that? And people are like, I've never seen her act like that before, right? And, that is the work that I think we are all engaged in, helping people deepen that self-awareness so that they are operating in alignment with their core values, so that they are aware when that thing is heating up inside of them. When they know that they need to step away or walk away, or, what we talk about is that sacred pause, which can be activated by just one deep breath in and out, right? But there is no denying that when we move into 2022 and we take all of this momentum that started with, as you said, the George Floyd murder and all that came after the aftermath, the declarations and the proclamations by organizations of how they wanted to be engaged. Now is the time for that check to come due. And that comes due in the way of the behaviors that you accept. I often speak about a culture is made up of behaviors that persist, those that are allowed to continue because everybody's doing it or nobody's calling it in or out, right? That's what's happening here. And so it can be in alignment with what we list on our website as our values and our mission. And sometimes it operates as a shadow. But I think when we move into 2022, if we're really going to help organizations, it's going to be at the individual level of nudging people toward consistent behaviors that align with what it means to lead inclusively, to create spaces of belonging, to make sure people feel connected, to make sure people feel seen, to make sure people feel heard, and to make sure people feel, like we've talked about with our children, that I can make a mistake, that I can be flawed and still be, right? Okay.
Right. Awesome. Tommy?
I have a quick follow-up, Patrice. And so in the corporate space, we know there's corporate speak. Folks, adults seasoned professionals, we can talk a good game, right? We can package wording, we can package kind of energy the way we want to, and sometimes it's to pacify the grumblings.
Mm.
What are some of your ideals, or what are some of your thoughts about organizations that are not truly bought into this work, but their counterparts, their peers, their circles are? So they want to be in the circle to say, we do have, diversity, equity, inclusion. You can check our website, and that's about as deep as it goes, right? And so it's very surface work. What do you say, or what are your thoughts about organizations that have not fully bought into the work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging?
Right. That's like the reckoning question, right? That is the okay, do you really want to walk the talk? Do you really want to be authentic or not? And I think, Tommy, more from the people who are in the culture, who are experiencing in the culture, opening up that voice for them to really see the other perspective, right? But in order for us to see that, we have to have the capacity. We have to be able to have a broader lens. We have to be open for it. I love the quote, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. If the student isn't ready, the teacher for what they really need isn't going to be there.
Right.
And so, we know that if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting the same thing. And while I absolutely have hope, because that's what fuels me, absolutely I have resilience, but what I don't have is the capacity to be in that insanity of, okay, we're just going to keep doing the same thing and we're going to keep getting the same results. And I think each of us has the capacity in the journey of the work that we're in to say, this is a client that I'm going to work with, and this is one that I'm not.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, to your point, I have been choiceful, and I have been in the space long enough so that I know when it's the real deal and when it's just a box checker.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll pass on that RFP. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. I love that. I'll tell you that there's some real insights and revelations that I've gained that have been crystallized in this last year. We are, all three of us, familiar with, as many of our audience, our community is, of the term the Great Resignation. And so, and that, for those that may not have heard that term, that's the term that sort of Gallup, I guess, coined in looking at the fact that in 2021, that in most organizations, in the typical organizations, half the people were actively looking for another job. One's working there, the other's actively looking for another job. Here's a major revelation that was crystallized for me in this last year. I think that in many ways, when we think about organizational change, we look at the C-suite in many ways the same way that the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy and the Tin Man and the Lion looked at the Wizard of Oz. That if we just get to the wizard, he'll be able to say the right things, give you a heart, give you a brain, get me back home. And I think in many ways we look at the C-suite through that lens. That if we can just get them on board with this, that they'll be able to make it all better for all of the rest of us. Here's what I've learned, that there's no magical C-suite. They're not sitting up there with all the answers and they're just waiting on us to say the right thing, turn the right knobs, get through the right door, and then voila, the whole company is going to be different. Here's what I've learned, that they also are victims of the same culture that they're responsible for leading. In other words, they've been ground up in the same unhealthy, process that had me being focused all my career on being an individual contributor, never really learning how to really develop and motivate people and build a culture that's people-centered, because I was so focused on products and services and tasks and getting that stuff done. And I always felt like the people side was supposed to somehow be on autopilot. Now, guess what? I exist in that same culture that's grinding me in the same way. And too often, people that have been historically disenfranchised sometimes get so focused on the pain, our personal pain and our needs, that we don't understand that they're being ground up by the same process. I would say to you that all people are self-interest oriented. Let's just go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah. And so if you're ever going to get anybody, nobody's going to come to something they think is a party for somebody else.
Yeah.
So every time they hear DEI, they think a party for minorities, a party for the LGBT community, a party for women, a party for those that are differently able. We've got to show them that we're actually trying to create a party and an oasis for you. And several examples of me learning this. I was working with a client, and it was a German company. And we were doing a session that they didn't think should be but an hour. Here we are, half day. And the CEO is beginning to see that she's hearing some things. She's on the verge of a breakthrough in a real conversation. She says to me, Eric, is there anything that you could do to help get us over that hump? I believe we're about to be vulnerable. We're about to say some things. I said, yeah. I went to an old school fishbowl, and I invited the C-suite to sit in a circle. It's open. Anybody that's willing to take a seat and just talk about what it's like to be a part of this team. They took a seat, and the first thing I did was I apologized to the CEO. I said, we met a couple weeks ago and I wasn't listening well enough. I said, and I want to apologize to you. I said, you'll see the things that you mentioned certainly are a part of the design. I said, but I walked away and I wasn't happy at the way that I listened. And she looked at me and her eyes were like, what? Like, I can't even believe you're saying that. I can't even recall it, but it set the tone. And then people started speaking. And one woman executive says, I've got 3 kids. And I haven't been able to spend any time with them. She says, I'm working in 3 time zones. My husband's have to do his job and carry the burden of our children. I can't go on this way. Another C-suite leader said, I'm a person that's more collaborative, and we never make any time for collaboration. So I just feel lost a lot in terms of how my work fits with the rest. Another C-suite person said, I'm so burnt out myself that I don't have any energy left in order to motivate the people that work for me. And I started seeing human beings that are in the same disaster that exists for other people. And so I think so for me, one of the revelations is we don't need to come to them with a stick. We don't need to come to them with a business case that involves everybody else. Let's start with the business case that involves them. They are like a phone that's running out of life, and it's flashing. The lights are flashing right before you die. That's what the C-suite looks like. And so we've got to rescue them from the culture that they lord over and have responsibility for. So that's one of the major revelations that got crystallized. I've seen it over the last decade. But this last year, I think that the pressure that all of society has been under has then forced that to come out in authentic, if you give the opportunity, ways for people to make themselves whole.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Other thoughts? So here's the things that we were looking at, Patrice. What are success indicators? What are some of the things that indicate to us that an organization is truly, they kind of get it, they're interested in making a real commitment to it? What are some of the things that you've seen that signal that?
Yeah. Well, I think key going to the C-suite, right? The leadership. that we talk about it can't just be bottom up. I think it has to be both. But when you are able to have a leadership that is saying, we need something different, we want something different, we want to understand what people are experiencing. When they bring that type of curiosity, which might render things that might be difficult to look at, might be hard to reconcile. But when they bring that openness and that curiosity to say, help me understand, that I think is key. And when they acknowledge that, what, I want to be part of the solution, but on that journey for being part of the solution, I am not going to be too big or too small to see how I might have contributed to the current problem.
Okay.
And so when you're able to have leadership engage like that, I think that eliminates some of the obstacles, that removes some of the barriers. The work is never easy, right?
Right.
But when you have people who also want it to happen, that is one of the indispensable elements of a successful relationship or a successful initiative, or where there can be not only momentum but sustained work around what we've been talking about, that sense of belonging, that sense of inclusion, that sense of being heard and seen, and your voice being valued, and there being true alignment. So I'm not just saying I value your time. I am not emailing you on your vacation. I'm not emailing you on my vacation, right? I'm not looking at you side eye when, you have to go and attend a play or attend a softball game, right? Tommy, your son's still playing baseball, right? Okay. Right. When you have to do that, I'm not looking at you side eyed. And I am also leading because I'm saying, hey, I'm heading out because I need to go and do X, Y, and Z. I begin to normalize those types of things. And so, when you have leaders that are willing to do that work to make that behavior align with what you really want, that's the indicator.
Right.
And
Tommy,
it has to be the individual. The
Right.
individual has to be willing to do some of the work.
I love that. I love that. Tommy, you and I were looking at some research around why people are leaving and not coming back. What are some of the things that you saw?
So if anyone were to Google search, where are all the employees? There are a number of different articles and resources that will come up, from the Wall Street Journal to the Harvard Business Review, et cetera, et cetera. And many of them are saying similarly the same thing. They're saying that in the Great Recession, that employees are quitting because, one, they can.
Mm-hmm.
They simply have come to a place in their personal or professional life that they can quit.
Right.
They don't have to stay there. And so what that looks like is that now employees are looking at their work environment, right? As Patrice said, do we have a sense of belonging? Do I have a sense of belonging? And do I have to tolerate not feeling like I belong, feeling like I'm welcome, feeling like I am valued? That is partly psychologically and emotionally, partly it's just true value by way of compensation. So am I compensated, i.e. my value monetarily? Am I compensated fairly, equitably? And if not, I can quit.
Right.
Number two is I'm trying to answer my why. The research says that people are answering their why. Why am I doing this?
Right.
What's my purpose? And if I'm not finding my why, finding my purpose, then I'm simply transitioning. I'm quitting or resigning, and I may go to an entirely different industry. Right? So we see that folks in education have quit the field of education. They've gone into a different field. Healthcare, gone into a different field. Construction, gone into a different field. So now people are beginning in the Great Recession to connect their passion to their work.
Love
where
that.
before is just exchange of dollars.
Right.
And then the other, data point that the resources share is that, and Gallup, as we know, have this research all the time that people don't leave typically because they don't know how to do their job. They
Right.
leave because they don't like the people they're working with.
Right.
And so, from that emotional intelligence perspective, the research says that people have basically had enough of other people.
Right. Right.
I'm just tired of you.
Right. Right.
And before, I was either shamed or afraid of leaving because I have a mortgage, I have rent, I have children or families to take care of. Now, no, I'm going to find my happiness, and I'm not happy now. I'm not happy here. I'm not happy with you. So, bye.
Right.
And that's what I think, to put a dovetail on this, I think that's the new reckoning that companies are realizing.
New reckoning.
That before, they may have used some lip service to say, employees, our workforce, that's our number one asset. They've said that in theory.
That's right.
But I don't think they've always believed it.
Right.
I think that they believe that if it's not you, we'll get someone else.
Right.
Now, as we closed out 2021 and moving into 2022, companies are saying, where are all the workers? Where are all the employees? We actually have to shut down.
Right.
Right? Because we devalued our number one asset.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And we created a culture of, hey, if you're not on the train, then get off.
Right.
And these folks have gotten off.
Right.
I'm sorry. I didn't really mean get off the train.
Right. I need you back. Now I got to pay double to get you back.
Now I got to pay double to get you back. And I have to listen to you. And I have to give you what you've always said. And in closing, and Patrice hit it on the head. If employees say, I want to feel like I belong.
Right.
Companies at times, they did not know how to do that.
Right. Right.
They really didn't know how to make others feel like they belong.
Right.
And now folks like us are that bridge, bridging that gap. Let's listen to employees. Let's fishbowl employees at all levels.
Right.
And let's put together some policies, practices, protocols, maybe a culture that answers that question, and simply not check that box of one training that lasted an hour and the issue was 2 or 3 decades long. All right. Yeah, we're coming to a reconciliation.
Right. And so let me sort of dovetail. So if people are listening to our conversation right now, they might not think that doesn't sound like a traditional diversity, conversation, because we're not talking about just one side of the scale. We approach this from an interdisciplinary approach. We know that to build the culture that's right for diverse people, you've got to build a culture that's right for everybody. And that many organizations are struggling with that. I call it creating people-centered workplaces. I was looking at some research that said that, factors that are causing people to leave, COVID health risks. I think people are still nervous. We're dealing with PTSD where people are bunkered in some, just saying that I'm not willing to come out of my house for this thing because I'm feeling unsafe and like it could cost me my life. Early retirement. Some people have just said, okay, I'm out. I'm going to go get me a cabin, be out in the woods somewhere. Care duties. Many people are having different additional responsibilities of their parents now that they have to care for. So they can't go work a job and kind of deal with those. They've got built up savings. That's another reason why people are leaving out. During COVID, some of them just start stockpiling money. So, food, money, so that they could live. And money alone won't draw people, if the quality of the workplace has deteriorated. Yeah. And so I think that if I'm an essential worker and now I'm going there with people unmasked, all kind of stuff all over the place, I got to deal with a public that's angry, that's stressed out and unmasked. So they're screaming at me, spitting all over me. No, I don't think I can do that anymore. And it takes time to sort of create the right workplace. Patrice, how are you seeing, how should companies be thinking about DEIA in this new world? How do you go beyond what people might define as just the traditional approach to this work?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, excellent research from both of you that gives us the global perspective of what's happening. And I think the common denominator in what both of you shared is we need to be in touch, in tune with the individual, with the experience that the individual is having. Because what is happening in parallel is the individual is getting in touch and in tune with their own experience. Right. And so what they're saying is, I have been making compromises, and we will make compromises. To live, we make compromises, but there is always the compromise too far. When now I can't even be in relationship with myself in an authentic way and be happy, right? So we know that Martin Seligman, who tells us, all that volume of work around what it means to have a life of purpose and that positive psychology. And it boils down to, am I happy? Am I happy? Am I in my flow? And I think that there's this, crossroads that we're at, that I'm asking myself, can I look myself in the mirror and really be at peace with the compromises I have made to stay here? Am I going to be able to look myself in the mirror 5 years from now? And people are saying, for some of the reasons you articulated, Eric, I'm fearful for my life. I've got other people who, are relying on me, right? So I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. And so you've got that individual reckoning. And I think organizations are having a reckoning because, people are people. And we have to treat them like humans. You are not a, widget. You and all that you bring is not fungible. The task might be, but you as a human being are not. And organizations that are willing to embrace the people, not just the talent, but the people, will have a different experience. And I think the work is twofold. There is vast uncertainty that we will not get beyond. There is a world, of things that we will not have the answers to. There is a lack of really understanding, and we have to have a capacity to deal with that. And it's not just deal with it and seek out our own clarity. And I think seeking out our own clarity is on that individual level of, am I good with what I'm doing? Is that going to be enough for me to be content? And it's a bit of self-compassion that I think we're seeing a rise of.
So like speed dating, Tommy, if you had some, go ahead, Tommy. I don't want you to lose your thought. If you had a follow up, and then I'm going to
go ahead, Eric.
Okay, so like speed dating, I'm just going to hit some topics and ask you all to kind of speak to them from a success indicators. One success indicator is when a company has put together the appropriate budget around this work. And I'm gonna add in that Johnny Taylor, who is the CEO of Sherm, wrote a book, Reset. In it, he said that if organizations want to look at commitment, look at what they did when Y2K was happening in preparation for that. That's what a real commitment looks like. How much did you spend in terms of money and time around that? The other one is COVID. How have companies spent and dealt with preparing around COVID? And so you can look at that as one indication of when you get it, what you begin to invest. I'd like each of you to say a word or two about the importance of budget and then what companies get back for the spend that they might have to make.
I would say that budget is important, and budget should be, with regards to this work, it should be aligned with the same type of spend in any other area of the company, from marketing to operations to HR and human capital, and that spend. So typically with the soft stuff, the culture stuff, it's the spend is very meek, right? And so the return on investment, although it may be 100%, is based on a 5% spend, which doesn't move the needle much.
Right.
So we need to take a look at when we look at a product and we're trying to, market that product to the consumer. Companies spend a significant amount, right, to have a higher yield.
Mm-hmm.
And so our budgets should be fluid, meaning or accessible. Companies shouldn't say we have a budget and we're going to piecemeal that budget,
Right.
and then we're going to take it away when the people are not important anymore.
Right.
That's the historical stuff with training taken away and all that good stuff.
Right.
I would just add another key indicator real quick to turn it over to Patrice. Another key indicator is to have dedicated people or an operation around this work.
Right.
And those people, I would recommend as a key indicator, are qualified for that work.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if a company has a CFO, a chief financial officer, a person that's dedicated, and a team
right,
dedicated to manage the finances,
right,
those people are qualified.
Right. They know what you're doing.
They didn't just come out of operations from the plant floor to say, hey, I can run that $22 billion business.
Right.
Oh, and so with all due respect, those people who are dedicated, appointed, promoted into the role of leading DE&I and A, that they should have some credentials.
Right. Right.
Going beyond just, I have 30 years working with the company.
Yeah.
They may still be in the loop of the culture as well. Right. And this work is not just a landing ground getting closer to retirement.
Right.
I'm 3 years away, soft landing and diversity is good.
Right.
So an indicator is that if the company is strategic and intentional about the people who are going to lead and champion this work and bring others along the way.
Patrice, if you can add some things then, now looking at budget, why is that a success indicator? How should companies think about their spend, their investment in this work? And now Tommy's also added structure around who leads it.
Yeah, that was smooth, Tommy, how you get that in there. First of all, what matters to us, we measure, right? What we value, we pay for.
Come on now.
Right. So if it is important enough, you will see the value. And you won't come and say, oh, we really want you to, train 1,000 people and we've got honorarium for you.
Yeah.
Right.
It just goes back to, like you're saying, you're not doing that in other areas of the business. And so when we talk about, are they ready for it? That's an indicator that they're not. And some of it might be a conversation. Let me help you understand.
Right.
And then let me also help you understand, what you can get for that.
Right.
It might not be this panel of people, but what you might be able to get and what you might be able to achieve. And it really boils down to, the question, would you be treating this any differently if it were going to have if you viewed it as having a direct impact on your bottom line?
Yep.
And guess what? This does have a direct impact on your bottom line. Right. This is not ancillary. This is not a side gig for what really happens. This enables you to increase profitability, increase engagement, increase retention. This is critical for your business. And if you don't show that in the budget, that is an indicator that there's some additional conversations and some enlightenment that needs to happen.
Right. I love that and totally agree with that. And so let me talk about when people outside of our world hear us talking about budget and investment, they think we're simply talking about ourselves. But I would say that when people have not put an appropriate budget in place, it's oftentimes because they don't know what it's costing them today to not be doing this work.
Yeah.
And so we're in agreement with you. We're not saying sort of just give a blanket open-ended budget. We're saying, actually, why don't you invest in what it's costing you today to not be creating this people-centered workplace? What is it costing you in lost contracts? Because now, because of ESG, a lot of companies, environmental, social, governance is putting pressure on people to now be able to look at these things, and you're losing business because they're looking at your executive leadership and your board and saying you're not diverse enough.
Yep.
And so you don't get selected for the business. How much has that cost you? Just do the math on that. If you're losing through regretted losses, diverse people of talent, women who are saying, I don't want to work like this. I actually have the talent and ability. I can go home and do it virtually. And I can get together with other people that are family oriented, and we can start up businesses ourselves. What is that costing you? I see organizations that are in conflict across regions and locations and levels. What is that costing your business for us not to be able to have those appropriate conversations? When I started 31 years ago, if you said that you had a job working commission, people would laugh and say you don't have a job at all. The job I would do on commission today is the one that we do. I would literally do the work that I do on commission. Because if I look at organizations that we've worked in, the beautiful part about working at all levels is that you get to work with the people that are closest to the customer and closest to the work. And I've seen situations where those people are not listened to because of classism. In other words, these pyramid organizations, leaders are spending too much time talking to each other and not enough time talking to the people that are closest to the work and closest to the customer, and they're making bad decisions. The only way a leader can make the best decision is that they're spending the appropriate time with the people that are closest to the work and closest to the customer. I've done the math on it. There are companies that we work with, because they didn't listen to the people, they had millions of dollars of recalls in terms of vehicles and other things. There's a dollar figure that's attached to that, that's linked to classism, not linked to racism, not linked to sexism. Sometimes it's simply classism. Do the math on that. And I would say to human resource leaders, if you're looking for something to do the work, stretch out and do the work for the C-suite to help them understand what it's costing them today to not be investing meaningfully in this work. And I think that would drive them from data sort of driven decisions. That's where I think organizations have to go. We're not saying just come up with a number. Drive those decisions based upon your story. Because the other thing that I'm finding is that C-suite leaders are not always moved by the body of literature and evidence that's out there. Everybody thinks that we're different. We're different than that. So don't come talking to me about the research. You're okay. I'm good with that. Let's do this magic trick with your data. And I think that when we begin to help organizations get there, I think they can make the decision then from a business standpoint. Another one, sort of understanding the current state. I would say that that's another. It's tangential to what I said about sort of the money part, but understanding their current state. Tommy, I know you do a lot of things around process systems, things like that. Talk about the importance of organizations that are serious about this, understanding their overall current state as it relates to DEI.
So from a personal perspective, self-awareness is one, understanding your current state, as well as understanding what others say about you. Self-awareness, right? It's not just about, I know what I am and I see who I am, but I just discount what everyone else says about me. That's not self-awareness. So organizations, corporations who see themselves as a whole body, right? It is imperative that they understand where they are now. Not as much where they were 10, 20, 30 years ago. Those are great benchmarks and milestones. But if they assess where they are now, they can, one, see if there has been progress against those previous milestones, or if there's been some digression,
Okay.
right? And 2020 and 2021 really exposed some things in different industries, healthcare, education, etc., that the current state was not as receptive. Let me just pause for a second. Let's take education. There's a mindset historically in education that to educate students, the students have to be in the classroom, brick and mortar.
Right.
That's the only way.
Right.
That's the way I learned. That's the way my grandparents learned. That's the way we've been learning for millennial. And to shame for those students who use technology like phones and tablets and computers.
Right.
And then 2020 hit, 2021. And educational systems, be it secondary and or higher ed, they didn't really take a pulse on the current state, that they had educators who were ill-skilled educating across technology.
Wow.
Right?
Great point,
So
Tom.
we created this COVID learning loss gap. Sometimes 6 months, 12 months, and some say 18 months. So organizations that take a look at their current state, if they are honest with themselves, they can see some of the advantages that the current state provides, as well as their gaps or needs for improvement. What it also does is, in the assessment to understand the current state, an organization should not simply ask people inside the organization.
Right.
That is important.
Right.
But listen to the voice of your customer.
That's good, Tommy.
Right. And so that customer may be a buying customer, or it simply may be a community where your business is in. There are communities that say, we never really liked you being here, this big box organization, because we're a mom and pop culture, right? And you came in and you really hurt our economy more than you helped. And we're praying that you don't leave. There are companies after companies after companies who have come in, usurped the resources, and then left.
Wow.
And left that organization, left that community kind of naked.
Right.
So when companies take a look at their current state,
that's excellent, Tommy.
They look at a number of different parameters of what is the cost analysis to their current state.
Right.
Those are my thoughts there.
Get your hand on the pulse of what's happening in your organization, in your community. Patrice, let me put a little different spin on this, and you can answer anything.
Okay.
But with you being sort of focused a lot over the years, the last couple of decades, on emotional intelligence, we know as an individual, if I'm high on emotional intelligence, that means I understand myself, I have a high self-awareness, and I have a strong ability to manage my behaviors. I also have a greater understanding of others and an ability to develop meaningful relationships with others. In other words, the ability to close that social distance between me and others. Talk about how that plays into this current state for individuals within organizations. And then is there a broader play for the organization itself around emotional intelligence?
Okay. Excellent question. And Tommy, it starts with that internal, external self-awareness as you described. So there is a evolution of me being able to understand myself. But as you've said, organizations are the collection of all these people, and organizations can be on that journey as well. So it always starts with deepening that self-awareness, that capacity to see myself more fully, to bring that curiosity to myself in a non-judgmental way, right? So, I'm not getting it today doesn't mean I'm not going to get it tomorrow, but to have that capacity in the realm of looking at organizations that are doing that personal, climate audit, or however we want to describe it. It is a self-critical analysis, and that's a legal framework that allows an organization to look inside and to see what's working and not working, and not necessarily be exposed to having that information open to discovery.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it is the process of doing that, and we have to have the capacity to do that, the willingness to do that.
Right.
And that requires also our ability to take on others' perspectives.
Mm.
For me to be able to see it the way Tommy sees it, to be able to feel it the way Tommy feels it, to be able then to take that insight and create something different for others. But there is that that growth mindset that has to fuel that. That
Woo!
it's not like, oh, I missed it, I'm never going to get it. It's
Right.
like, oh, there's an opportunity for me to get better. And that's when you're practicing. When we look at emotional intelligence, that whole volume of that inside work to have greater outward impact. But that inside work requires me to be mindful of what is,
Yeah.
to be able to look at it, not run away from it, to be able to see it fully and to say, maybe I was doing the best I could then, but you know what? I could be doing better. And you know what? I could learn to do better by learning from Eric Ellis, from Tommy Lewis, right? So I have to have the capacity then to be able to reach out and say, okay, I need help. I need to ask for help. And that goes back to what I said. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. But to get ready, you've got to do the inside work.
Right. I love that.
I'll just add real quick if I can, because Patrice hit a nerve with me, where we've done an assessment, an organizational culture or climate assessment with a client. And this is a very large client. And the leader of the client has asked us over the last 3 to 4 years to conduct these assessments in different parts of their organization. Right. And so to date, we've done maybe 8 or 9 different assessments. It takes about 3 months to complete the assessment, a lot of interviews, focus groups, electronic survey instruments, etc. We landed on one particular division. And this was our 6th assessment. And we did the same approach: focus groups, individual interviews, electronic survey instruments. All of it is anonymous and confidential, right? So we don't name any names in the final report. As I was presenting kind of the first draft of findings, the leader of the particular division became very defensive of what was said.
Right.
And they began to lash out at me and my team for reporting what their people said.
Right.
Right. Tommy, that's not true. That's not what's happening. Right. I don't know. They literally said, I don't know why you said that. Wait a minute. No, we just put up a graph that 87% of your people said it. Not me, not my team of 12, that 87%. I'm just sharing the theme. And so that was the leader of that division. The leader of the organization sensed defensiveness. And to Patrice's point, the leader of the organization basically said, and they had the power, said, you're not ready to receive this information, are you? Right? You're not ready to receive it. Now, we've been doing these assessments every quarter, right? Or every 6 months. And I know it's tough to receive, but it's the voice of your employees, as well as the voice of the stakeholders, those who use your services. This is within the organization. So this is not a pointing the finger or victimizing. This is to help us tweak our processes and our service delivery, that we give the employees what they need, right? And in closing, there was some language that this particular area and how they talked about employees, to be specific, they called employees clients, right? And employees said, we don't like being referred to as clients. Their department is in the company. We are employees, right? And that division said, no, you're not employees, you're clients. We can accept you or reject you. And yes, and they started to bump heads.
Right.
At the end of the day, the leader of the division, they acquiesced a little bit to say, okay, we'll listen to the employees, right? And then ultimately, there were some changes, right, by way of language, concepts, and terms. It became more easy for people just to do a couple of things. Don't call them clients.
Right.
Call our employees employees.
Right.
It was like an epiphany,
Right.
right? But the end user, the folks on the ground said, just call us humans, right? And don't go into slicing and dividing and separating,
Right.
right? And so the assessment to be, one has to be aware and willing to accept it in a growth mindset, as Patrice said, the growth, not in defensive. No, don't talk about us. We're perfect. We can't do anything wrong. And if you say anything wrong about us, it's a lie.
Right.
No, it's not always a lie.
Right.
Sometimes it does stink.
Can I add to that before we move from that point? Because the neuroscience tells us that when we deepen and grow our self-awareness, we also deepen and grow our capacity to be empathetic. And Tommy, the example you just gave was the result of that. When I'm able to, gain more insight about who I am, I'm able to sit with you. And the key word that you used that I was waiting for and I was cheering inside when I heard it is listen. When we are able to truly listen, which is a indicator, which is foundational for empathy, then I can show up with greater empathy.
I love that.
We're seeing that leaders need more empathy. As you talked about a Google search, what is one of the key elements of, a true leader is their capacity to show vulnerability and empathy.
Right. Love that. What we're seeing in terms of the research, what it's saying about headhunters for C-suite individuals is that soft skills have gone up tremendously in terms of what they're looking for CEOs who are going to be successful in this new workplace. Because of the globalization of companies, because of the health pandemics that we're in, the increased stress that families and employees are under, they're now saying that all that financial stuff that you got, that's not the main stuff that begins to separate one leader from another. The great leaders that we're looking for, that companies are demanding, are those that are able to navigate these soft skills. So I know we're coming closer to the wrap up, but this has been awesome. But let me ask you all this. So in some ways, we walk this same journey ourselves in our own organizations. I know that I say all the time that it's critical for me to hear the authentic voice of people that work in my organization. And what I know is that the more I hear their honest feedback, their most authentic voice, the better opportunity I have to make adjustments in myself in this culture that might lead us to greater success. Now, I know that academically, and I even act it out and say it. But I can tell you that it's never easy trying to hear some things that you're not maybe doing well. But I know that to hear them puts me in position to get better. So when you start saying listening, Patrice, and that being the foundation of empathy, I think first of all, we have to listen to the voice inside of us that's letting us know when we're blowing it.
Yeah.
Like I start there.
Yeah.
Introspection, to take inventory and do a score on what I'm doing well and the messes that I'm making. And I can't assume that those messes that I know I'm making, that everybody else is missing them. No, they're not. Yeah. And then the next thing I have to be able to do is really open up to my people, being able to give me real feedback. I think the way I do that is by sharing where I know I'm blowing it.
Yeah.
I start there. I did this. I saw the problem it created. Are there other examples of dumb stuff like that I'm doing? Easier for me to say to you all, a little bit harder for me to say to my people. What are your thoughts around this? And then we're going to respond to Willie Halbert's comment here. And I think that's going to take us to the end.
I'll share real quick and then leave it to Patrice to kind of wrap it up here. In my organization, I have learned in the recruiting hiring process to hire people who have a particular personality, but have a high value. Here's what I mean by that. For me, as the president and CEO of my organization, I don't want to be yelled at. I don't want to be out-talked at all.
Right.
I've hired people who are quietly, consistently telling me you're wrong. They don't get pitchy. They don't get loud.
Right.
I have some people in my organization that when I get all riled up, wait a minute, this is where we're going to go. Tommy, I don't think it's the right direction. No, this is the right direction. I don't think so. And I can hear that. I know my personality. If I raise my voice and my energy and you raise your voice and your energy, I'm not hearing you.
Right. That's good.
These folks in my company, they are true. They're valued in their truth, in their knowledge, in their experience. And they know in this organization, they don't have to raise their voice to defend it. Just keep saying the truth. My hard head would get it after a while.
I love that, Tommy.
Right? Oh, it's fantastic. I love it.
Right. Patrice?
Okay, so for me, I'm going to take a different spin on it. I've created a personal board of directors, which includes mentors, which includes coaches, which includes critics. And so I think one of the foundational things that I have been able to leverage is the capacity to not only seek, but to receive feedback. You know, I think there is power in asking the question, how am I doing?
Right.
What could I be doing better? And so that is the tool that I use to help round out that potential blind spot that I might have, and to make sure that I am having the impact that I intend to have, right? To make sure that that's aligned. And I would encourage everyone, particularly as we move into this new year, to take stock of who you have on your team, and for everyone to take a moment to really create not only that vision board for 2022, but also that board of directors that's going to help you achieve that vision as well.
And I'd add to that, thank you both for your responses there. I would say if you think that failure can put pressure on you to change, allow success to do that. In other words, my view is that God says, oh, okay, you really couldn't hear me fully when you were failing. You were praying a lot, but you didn't hear me as fully, but you really will hear me as you begin to succeed. Because as you get too much on your plate to handle, it starts putting pressure on you around your limitations and your weaknesses. And you begin to see more clearly that I'm not going to make it. If I don't figure out how to do things better and stuff that people have been saying to us for a long time. You began to envision, I might not make it unless I really can make some changes and get the right team around me. Patrice, you've done it by design. I think that's huge. But I think for everybody out there, see, you might be longing for greater success. Be careful what you pray for, what you ask for. I would say that God showed me in my 10 years, because I had 10 years that I felt like was a season of no. And then I got a season of yes. And God just hit the switch and it looked like everything I knocked on the door open. And I said, God, what was that? He said, that wasn't a season of no. That was the season I gave you to write your book. That was the season I gave you to upgrade your materials. That was the season I gave you to work on you and did not provide you manna to get to the next. So what I would say to people is whatever season you're in right now, take advantage of that. If you're in a slow season, see that as a gift.
Yes.
So that you can prepare for greater seasons, because they will come if you're lined up in your area of purpose. Here's what Willie has said to us. When we invest in people, they give more. Our workplace is going to look different, and that is not a bad thing. Allow the challenges to work for us, make room for change. Both of you can have your final words from that, And then we're going to tell the community, stay tuned. We're going to have to bring Patrice back. Oh, my goodness. She's amazing. We knew that. But boy, we heard from her today to kick off this new year. And you are a part of our history now.
Oh, yeah.
I tell people all the time, Patrice, that the one thing about Tommy and I doing this, it doesn't matter who in the world is watching it.
Mm-hmm.
We now have been able to bring together some of the people that we love the most, that we have the greatest respect for, and you are part of our library. And we get to go back and listen to your words over and over and over again. Tommy, and then Patrice, you'll close us out.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say that I believe Willie is correct, that investing in people. I want to also shout out Eric and Patrice. I want to shout out our community.
Yes.
Because even on this January 1st of 2022, Eric and I had already planned, to have the show to kick it off this year. We took a couple of weeks off at the end of December, and we're always uncertain if our community is going to be here.
That's right.
Always here. And so now that we have another go-to friend, family member, expert in Patrice Borders, I will tell you that it makes our job easier, because Eric and I love to talk to each other every weekend, but it's easier when we can flow like this and really allow our steel to sharpen one another.
Right.
In our community that has dialed in with a couple of comments, they are appreciated. We are investing in them, and they are investing in us in so many different ways. So I want to acknowledge our community as well. Patrice.
Love it. It has been a joy and a pleasure to start 2022. This is like the first conversation that I have engaged in the year, and it has really been nourishing to my spirit. And I want to say, yes, there is this understanding of we might be in different seasons. And this has been a season of growth, a season of contemplation, a season of identifying what contentment is. And so, the mindfulness practice that I engage in has really been one that has helped me to see and to seek clarity in the midst of uncertainty. And so 2 things. Clarity in the midst of uncertainty. I want to offer up to anyone who wants to find me on LinkedIn that I have a grounding and a centering practice, a guided meditation that I can send you that can help you, because to get that clarity in the midst of this uncertainty, we need to be centered. So I have recorded a guided meditation that I will, share with anyone who, finds me on LinkedIn and hits me up for it. It's about 4 minutes long. And then the second is, it has been a season, right, of writing as well. So I have a collaborative effort in a book that will be released in February, along with several other authors who have like-mindedness around what it means to reset ourselves. My chapter is focused on resilience and self-compassion. The book is called Micro Shift. And so again, if you follow me on LinkedIn or follow my business page on LinkedIn, you'll get more information about that. And then I have written manuscript for my next book. And that is going to be around a mindfulness practice that I do called the 20-second hug, which is around being here in the moment, uniting with what we know is best within us, and then being guided by intent. That's the H, the U, the G. And so be on the lookout for that release date as well. But to start this year with these 2 fine people in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know what? I truly feel like I belong here.
Yes.
Well, you absolutely do. And I'm going to make you a couple of promises. Number 1, people are going to go crazy on us if they can't find you. So you got to tell them again how to contact you, how they can access you as a facilitator, as a consultant. I want to make sure that they know how to do that. You're amazing. And again, if you can send us information on how those resources can be accessed, Tommy and I promise that we're going to have you back. We might even have you back with your whole team of authors. We might have to do it in even a different platform and then broadcast it. But we're absolutely going to do that because both of those sound amazing.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you for this
Again, how can
opportunity.
they get in touch with you?
Okay, well, my LinkedIn page, just Patrice Borders. You'll find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And that's my social media playground is LinkedIn. So
Okay.
all the information is there. And then also Prevention Strategies LLC. I have a business page as well. So like me, follow me in both of those spaces, and I'll make sure you get that centering meditation.
Okay. Well, thank you. We've enjoyed kicking off this 2022 with a bang. We've gotten smarter already.
Yes.
Tommy and I have gotten smarter because Patrice is here. We're going to have her back by popular demand. She's amazing. And we thank you for joining us in this diversity conversation. Stay tuned. We'll see you next week, same time. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye now.
you.